Welcome to the Lessons for Living television program. My name is Bill Santos. Thank you so much for watching. We have a special program for you today. We've invited one of our guests, you will know him, Dr. Bussey, to discuss some of the ongoing legal situations where law and religion seem to intersect. And so I want to start the program by welcoming Dr. Bussey to the program.
It was great to be with you, Bill.
It's great to have you back here again. We always look forward to your insights, and particularly on these issues of religious liberty and religious freedom and freedom of speech. Now, for the benefit of our viewers, you've had some major changes in your life since you were last with us.
Yes.
You have gone and started up a foundation called First Freedoms Foundation. You left employment that you had, 10 years?
10 years, yeah.
Sort of the stability of employment to venture on. And so what prompted you to take this leap and go out on your own and begin First Freedoms Foundation?
Yeah, well, Bill, it's been quite the journey for sure, and one that's I would say it's a bit of the entrepreneurial spirit, to just kind of move out. But what happened is, for me, over the last couple of years, especially as the COVID pandemic developed, that I was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the loss of freedoms going on in this country.
Okay.
And it started out, really from the very beginning. I remember in March of 2020 coming back from a trip out visiting our daughter and family, and just the state of siege that we were as a society on the plane, on everything everyone was talking about. If anyone sneezed, everyone was looking. I mean, there was just this really frightened state of affairs. And then quickly, government began implementing various lockdowns, measures, and so forth. And we were all in a state of uncertainty, right? I mean, for the first number of weeks, it was like, okay, so we need to do these things in order to, ensure that we're not going to be causing harm to our neighbor. And as Christians, that's an important issue. We need to do that. And then we had all kinds of reports coming out of Britain and other places that saying that, the computer models are suggesting there's going to be millions of people that are going to be dying. And of course, yes, there were millions, but nothing at all to what was being projected. And so people began questioning and began asking questions. And what was fascinating about that is that just the mere asking of a question was seen as something wrong. That there was suddenly within our zeitgeist, the German word, the idea of the context in which we lived, the idea of just asking a question was something you shouldn't do. You should just let the experts tell you what needs to be done. You should be quiet. You should accept it and move on.
Right. Okay.
And I was getting concerned on this. I felt that no, in any given time, we need to be asking questions. Right. In order for us to be able to find out what the truth of the matter is, we need to ask questions. Then things began happening that was also disconcerting for me, was when government began implementing various rules and regulations, lockdowns and so forth. And as time moved on, we began to recognize that, yes, obviously, COVID is real. Yes. People are dying from it. Tragically. Yes, tragically. But we began seeing patterns early on as to who would be most affected and so forth. And there wasn't any allowance for, like, for example, you'd have the recognition that the elderly, those who had comorbidities and so on, were those who were going to be affected from this disease. And then it was like a state of fear came upon us as government got more and more control. Now, one of the things that, as a student of history, I've always been concerned with is that every time government takes on a new power, it generally will hang on to.
Right.
right? I mean, let's face it, our own income tax.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Perfect.
I mean,
the temporary
the
income tax.
temporary income tax for World War I, you know, and just look at how temporary it is. And it's like, it's always been this march when it comes to government. And, you know, when we look back and we see society at large and we see the beautiful freedoms that we have in the West, in Canada, in North America, is that this is based on hundreds and hundreds of years of experience of dealing with despotic rulers.
Right.
That we would say, like, how is it, like, we've come to a place, it seems right now, where we have ended up taking everything for granted.
Right.
You know, we've got freedom of speech and so forth, and we've got all of our freedoms. And then all of a sudden, in a very short period of time, those freedoms are now being curtailed.
Right.
So there were a number of events that I was struggling with. I was struggling with the breakdown in family relationships, where people are getting very angry and upset if a person is not vaccinated. You know, I mean, I've heard horror stories of people who are being so mistreated because of their decision, and often a conscientious decision.
Right.
And so there was breakdowns in families, there's breakdowns in society. We were early on in the pandemic, my wife and I, we give blood on a regular basis, and have been until COVID, and everything is kind of all messed up now. But regularly, every 3 months or whatever the allowable months are, we would go and give blood. And I remember you know, as COVID was getting underway, we're standing outside. You know, it was not bad of a day, but it was cool nevertheless. Yes. And so here it is, you have to wait outside until you can go into, you know, in the foyer, and then from there you get to go inside and all the rest of it. And my wife was just commenting to me about, you know, just like this doesn't make a whole lot of sense or whatever, and someone else in the line took offense with that and saying that this is a first world problem and you should be, you know, and it was like I looked over at her and just mouthed to her, you know, let's just keep cool, let's not worry about it, let's not respond. Right. and it's just that uneasiness. Yes. And so as time has gone on, and more government power has been coming on, and then there would be some relaxation, then restrictions again, and so forth. And what was interesting is that I have some friends of mine who are epidemiologists and so on, and they were sharing with me, like, from the very, very beginning, that you know, this is going to go in waves, and that there will be variants that'll come, you know, and with these kinds of COVID viruses, these are things that we ultimately are going to have to live with. Right. And yet it seemed like, as a society, we were saying, no, we want to get rid of this virus. Right. And it just didn't make sense to me. And it seemed like I was like, am I the only one that's
a lone voice?
Yeah.
Right.
And like, just thinking about it, and for the longest time, I basically kept my mouth shut, although I'd voice opinion from time to time, but as time went on, and as I saw, you know, more and more restriction on churches, for example, I became really concerned. Now, we've had some pastors and so forth who have been bucking it, and they've been receiving all kinds of negative press, been called the rogue pastors, and all of that kind of stuff. And immediately I began thinking about history again. Oftentimes, those who are deemed to be rogue have often made great changes in the world. And that is not to be flippant with any kind of policy or anything that's meant to protect people and all of that kind of stuff, but it is to begin to start asking questions. Right. And so, as time has gone on, people have been, it seemed to me anyhow, a lot less questions are being asked, because everyone is just kind of like following the narrative. And So government has a narrative, the experts, media is going along with it, and so forth. So some of the events that really burdened me were the concept of the breakdown in the families that I saw.
Yes.
The breakdown with respect to churches. Churches are literally breaking apart across this country because of these issues. The government refusing to allow people to really be engaged in protest, except for the protests that the government is in favor of. The Prime Minister made that very clear recently. We've seen also a vilification of those who have chosen not to be vaccinated. And this came out in the last election in September 2021. And what bothered me with that election, there were several things, but was when the Prime Minister stated that people who are unvaccinated are racist, are misogynist, are anti-science. And then he said perhaps the most chilling words. How do we, how was it, sorry, it was something like, these people, it was...
we have to tolerate?
Yeah, how do we tolerate these people? That was it. How do we tolerate these people? Now, immediately my back went up. These people? These people are actually Canadian citizens. These people are mothers and fathers and children and brothers and sisters. These people are members of churches. These people are taxpayers. These people, I mean, never in the history of our country have we had anybody that I'm aware of, other than perhaps you go back in the 19th century where maybe indigenous groups were called unflattering terms, but in the modern 21st century, that we are going to say, these people? Immediately I was like, no, this is now going a much step further. Then the other item in the election that really was another item of concern for me was when the Prime Minister made the announcement that upon re-election, he was going to take away the charitable status of pro-life groups who were involved in giving what he figured was disinformation. Now, this is a Prime Minister who has labeled a group of people as these people, as racist, misogynist, anti-science, and he was now going to determine who is going to be giving disinformation. At that point, I could not stay where I was. I decided that no, the time has come, for me at least, to get involved in the struggle, to help people wherever I can, to find kindred spirit, as it were, to say, okay guys, what can we do? So I looked at a case, and it's been in my mind for many, many years. In fact, even when I was in law school, I remember studying the case, and I remember my law school professor talking about the case. And it was a case, the Samur decision in 1953 out of the province of Quebec, and it was decided ultimately by the Supreme Court of Canada. And one of the justices, Justice Ivan Rand, was talking about what he called the original freedoms. And those original freedoms were freedom of speech, freedom of religion, which I have recognized, you know, that is a subset of freedom of conscience. So I use freedom of conscience, but he said freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and inviolability of the person. Those, he said, were the original freedoms. In other words, these freedoms existed before we even had a country. Okay? So, so then as we were talking in our group about, okay, what should we call this organization, someone piped up, well, and I think it was my wife actually, why not say First Freedoms? And so we called it First Freedoms Foundation. And our purpose is to basically help the Canadian public, again, to become reacquainted with these first freedoms.
Right.
Because with freedom of speech, if we don't have freedom of speech, we can't figure out what is up, what is down.
Right.
There are many different people who have many different views, and every view is important, and every individual should be heard.
Yes.
We shouldn't be having this type of situation right now, where even in the big tech industry that they even. I should just say that at First Freedoms we do a lot of interviews with different people, and we have some of our videos taken down from YouTube, right? Because we're somehow giving misinformation.
Right.
And my point is that I don't mind speaking with anybody who even has a different view than me.
Exactly.
You know, because it is only through the opportunity to be able to hear the other person that they may in fact educate me in my own opinion, and that my opinion may change as a result.
Well, that's the way it's sort of always been, isn't it? I mean, and I know, like, maybe some of our viewers don't know this, but I know that you've been before the Supreme Court arguing these cases, that in this we have a marketplace of ideas, and that everyone has to be able to express their ideas.
Absolutely.
And you fought for that.
Yeah.
Even for people that have ideas that are contrary to your ideas, because
Absolutely.
we can't stifle that.
Yeah.
So let me I'm not a legal expert by any stretch of the imagination, although I've watched a lot of Matlock. But I think there's a natural tendency, from what I understand, for government to overreach. Thus the reason why we have charters and constitutions that limit the behavior of governments. Because it's not to say these are bad people, but the natural tendency of government is to move towards an overreach. Yeah. And so as democracies, from what I understand, we sort of protect the public by establishing these charters that place these limits that, you know what, people have to have the freedom to express themselves. People have, right? And so, and it is kind of chilling. It is a different situation for me as an outsider looking. I mean, I'm constantly wondering, well, what can I say and what can't I say?
And it's that chilling effect that's so...
And where do I go? You see, Barry, like, who do I, like, if I feel that my freedom to express myself has been curtailed, where do I go? Like, who do I speak to? Like, who do I say, hey, listen, I feel like some of my rights have been infringed upon? That is an issue, like, that's something I think about all the time.
Well, and I think we all should be thinking about it. See, what's fascinating is that, again, it comes back to the idea of recognizing that the gift of freedom that we have in our country did not just automatically appear.
Right.
It has been hundreds of years in the making. You know, when you look at the situation with King John, back in 1215 and so forth, where the barons and all of the nobles went to go to the war, you know, in Runnymede, and finally they said, okay, let's sit down, listen, you will follow, you know, these rules, right? And so we got the Magna Carta.
Right.
And the idea here is that the absolute power of the king could not do violence without the rule of law.
Right.
And that principle is one that has come all the way down to us.
Right.
So that whenever you have the government, which has the big stick, right? Let's face it.
Yes.
You and I could say something that could offend the government officials and all the rest of it. They can make life pretty hard.
They can, yeah.
And we've seen that just recently, right? They can freeze bank accounts.
Yes.
Right? Can you imagine? Freeze bank accounts. Okay, so the whole idea was that you limit that power.
Right.
Right? King John, you better agree to this.
Right.
That if you are going to do violence to us, it'll only be in accordance with the rule of law.
Right.
And what's happened? Over the years, the despotic rulers, what they did, they said, okay, well, okay, so we have this rule of law, but now let's change it a little bit. We won't kill you, but we'll torture you.
Right.
right? And so then eventually we got to the point, well, no, we're not going to agree to torture either, right? And so, cruel and unusual punishment then becomes a recognition of the rule of law.
Right.
And that's part of this, the third point is the inviolability of the person, is that you can't do violence to the individual unless you use the rule of law.
Right.
And you can't imprison somebody for long periods of time out of a whim. It must be due process. And we have this. This has taken us 800 plus years to be able to have this great place of freedom that we call Canada.
Right.
It just didn't
happen. Yeah.
So people are wanting to come here. They're wanting to participate in this place of freedom. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of people who take the view that this is a racist country.
Right.
This is an unacceptable country.
Right.
This country has bad actors in its history. Of course it does. But it's only as we learn from those bad actors that we can pay attention to our present situation, and we can say, hey, this is unacceptable. Right? And so as all of this was going on, for me it was like, okay, you know what? Something's got to be done here.
Right.
And so we decided we would start this foundation. And what we're planning to do, and what we are doing, is we're wanting to re-educate Canadians on these important principles, the first freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, inviolability of the person. And we do that through interviews. So I do a lot of interviews that we have up on our website, and we have, I do a lot of writing, so I do a lot of op-ed type pieces, but I'm also doing academic writing. I'm working on a book right now on conscience, on the law of conscience in Canada. And it is important, and I should also say that we're also looking at, as funds allow, for us to take on cases to support people in maintaining their rights. I find it amazing that we have situations in Canada right now where even some lawyers are refusing to take cases that are politically incorrect. And of course, the problem is we're in a society, right, where there's a lot of this cancel culture going on, where if a lawyer is involved in representing, for example, unvaccinated who've lost their job because of being unvaccinated, then there's a situation where people are, some law firms have told me that no, they've had people leave because they won't take those cases.
My goodness.
And that's unheard of, right? Because I remember when I first got into law, my wife said to me, "So Barry, would you represent someone who committed a crime?" And I said, "Yes." Why? Well, because as we were taught in law school, everybody is entitled to a fair hearing.
Right.
And it's those kinds of principles we need to come back to and say, hey, this is a free country. We need to have the rule of law.
I know you got a lot more to say on this, so here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
We're going to stop our discussion here.
Okay.
We're going to carry it on as soon as the camera ends, and we're going to make sure we're going to broadcast the continuation of our conversation next week.
Okay.
Okay, because I know you've got a lot more to say on this, and we want to hear you. And so you're not going to miss out on anything. We're going to continue our discussion here. We're going to make sure the cameras are rolling, and next week you'll be able to watch the continuation of this discussion. Just before we break, I'd like to have a word of prayer. Sure. Gracious God, loving Heavenly Father, we just place this great nation in your hands, our leaders in your hands. Father, we just pray that you bless us, bless our country, bless our leadership. May this place be the place that you have ordained it to be. Bless each and every viewer that is watching now, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, we've come to the end of another Lessons for Living television program. Thank you so much for watching. Barry, let me thank you for joining us and providing these important insights. And folks are going to see us next week again. We're going to be wearing probably the same clothes because we're just going to continue our conversation and make sure we capture it on tape so that they can see that. But we look forward to having you again with us next week.
My pleasure.
How can we get in contact with the First Freedoms Foundation?
Firstfreedoms.ca.
Firstfreedoms.ca. We're going to place a link on our website also under the previous programs. So they'll be able to watch this program, and right underneath there'll be a button and they can connect directly to you.
Right.
That's what
Thank you.
we'll make that available.
Okay.
Remember to visit our website, l4ltv.com. Follow us on social media. Every morning, 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time, I put out on Instagram a short 1-minute devotional video. Great way to begin your day with your mind focused on things of heaven. Like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel. An audio version of this program is available on SoundCloud. You can download it and you can take it with you. You can share it with your friends. Very important information. We try to make it available to you through all of the different social media channels. Also remember to visit our missionnowcanada.com website, which is the humanitarian overseas work that our organization also does. Check that out. We are hoping to schedule an overseas mission trip for later on this year. Visit our website, missionnowcanada.com, to get the latest information on any upcoming trips. Well, we're all out of time. We look forward to being back with you again next week as we continue our discussion with Dr. Bussey. We hope you'll join us. We'll see you then. God bless you.